Ouija boards are the subject of much controversy. Having grown up with a psychic mother, I'm pretty comfortable using them, although I know that it's wise to take some precautions, such as lighting a white candle and placing a chalice or bowl of water nearby to help attract positive spirits. I had some spectacular experiences with ghosts during my years at the College of Mount St. Vincent, especially at Marillac Hall. I lived in Marillac Hall in my junior year. I'm glad that I had a roommate, because I don't think I would have been brave enough to live there on my own. The oldest building on campus, Marillac was built in the late 1800s. My college always had a lot of fun hosting haunted houses and ghost tours for Halloween. After getting permission from the residence director, I invited my mother and a friend up to do a Ouija board seance at Marillac Hall. I was standing downstairs in the lounge, waiting for my mother to arrive. Suddenly, I heard a tapping sound. Looking up, I saw a face grinning back at me through the porch door window. I must have jumped 10 feet high. The woman on the other side of the doorway laughed hysterically. "Very funny, Mom," I chided her. "You have to come in the front door? The porch is always kept locked." She nodded, and I went around to get her and our family friend, Artie, signed in under me. Artie, also known as Lord Tammuz, is another elder of the craft in New York City. He and my mom have been friends for many years, and they're used to doing the Ouija board together. Mom, Artie, and I spent some time catching up while we waited for people to arrive for the event. Once everyone was there, I introduced my mom and Artie to the group. Mom explained how we were going to respectfully ask any spirits who were around if they wished to communicate. This wasn't going to be an aggressive event where we tried to coerce spirits into making contact. While there were never any guarantees that spirits would decide to come through the board, Mom was hopeful that there'd be a high level of activity that night, because it was Halloween. The veil between the spirit world and the living is thinnest on Halloween night, which is also known as Samhain in Wiccan traditions. Due to fire safety precautions, we couldn't light any candles, but Mom said it was okay. She didn't think we'd run into any negative spirits. The Mount is a peaceful, holy place. CMSV was founded by the Sisters of Charity, and Marillac Hall has a tiny chapel located on the first floor, where the sisters sometimes hold special, private prayer sessions. We turned down the lights, keeping only the low lamps on, so we could see the board clearly. Mom and Artie did the board, while I recorded the words that the spirits spelled out. The first spirit that came through was a gentleman from the 1940s. His wife had attended the College of Mount St. Vincent back when it was still a women's college. He had fond memories of visiting her here while they were courting. They had gotten married after she graduated. The room that we were doing the Ouija board reading in is known as the engagement room. Mom and Artie didn't know this, but my classmates and I did, because we knew the history of the building. When the school was still exclusively for women, male visitors weren't allowed to go upstairs to visit their girlfriends. The nuns would lead the gentleman into the engagement room to wait. Then they would let the young lady know that she had a visitor. The second spirit that came through was a priest with a heavy Irish brogue named Father William. During his life, he had resided on campus and taught mathematics. This was reflected in the friendly but professorial manner in which he addressed us. He told us that many spirits chose to haunt CMSV, but not in the negative sense. Very few, if any, were stuck here. Rather, the positive experiences that they had at the Mount forged a bond with the place that kept them coming back to visit long after they'd gone to the light. Father William went on to explain that sometimes spirits returning for a visit would be surprised by the changes that the Mount had undergone in their absence. His former abode was now a large broom closet. One of my classmates gasped, "Are you the ghost that haunts the storage closet on the 3rd floor, whose door always opens up on its own?" "Aye," Father William spelled out. "Why do you stay there?" we asked. "The landlord hates me," he responded. Then Father William told us all to study hard and said that he had to be going because there were other spirits who wanted to come through the board. A couple of other spirits came through. One commented on a student's velvet curtains and said that she could leave them open if she ever wanted to see the ghosts that congregate on the balcony outside her window at night. Just like the porch, the balcony had been sealed off many years prior, and students were forbidden to climb out onto it, even if their windows overlooked it. The young woman shook her head. "After this, I'm always keeping them closed." Then, the last spirit of the night arrived. This one was a female from the 1950s. "Hi, gang," she chirped out over the board. She introduced herself as KM. "I love Marillac. I have a monument here." We all looked at each other. As far as my classmates and I knew, there was no monument to any student on campus. We were curious about how she had died. KM grew sad. "I did something foolish that led to an accident." "What did you do?" we asked. She spelled out one word: dumbwaiter. She had apparently climbed inside of one, and the resulting accident had led to her death. I nodded. "Oh, that must be why all the old dumbwaiters in the building are sealed up now." The spirit circled yes on the board. We were all silent for a moment. Then, one of the students asked, "Where's your monument?" KM responded, "In here. Turn on the light." We didn't understand what she meant, so we kept turning on and off lights for a few minutes. We didn't see any monument, though. It was close to midnight at this point, so we had to bring the event to a close. We all said goodbye to KM. Then Mom thanked the spirits for joining us and closed out the session. As we were cleaning up, Mom noticed something behind a tall lamp. The lampshade had been hiding a brass plaque that was attached to the wall. The initials of the person who the plaque commemorated were KM from the class of 1955. "What we should do is go to my house," suggested Debbie thoughtfully. The rest of us took little convincing to take that fateful Friday afternoon off from school. We were all 16 years old that summer and were ready for an adventure. So when the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch break, we headed out of the gate to freedom. As is usually the case in these sorts of situations, we quickly became bored. We could watch the television anytime. No one fancied a snack, and we decided against raiding the drinks cabinet, as that wasn't the kind of fun we were after. But we dared not venture outside for fear of being spotted during what should have been a school day. Somebody, I don't recall who, suggested playing Ouija. Most of the group was unfamiliar with the practice, so after giving a brief explanation, I took it upon myself to gather the necessary apparatus. I repositioned the coffee table, while Debbie searched for pen and paper and found us a glass tumbler to use. With varying degrees of anticipation, we each placed a finger on the glass, furtively glancing around the circle. As no one seemed keen on taking the lead, I myself asked the infamous question, "Is there anybody there?" The room erupted into stifled giggles. Some girls were hiding behind cushions or had covered their faces with their palms. Others looked ready to cry, although the two boys present put on a good show of false bravado. Undeterred, I continued my questioning of the spirits and those who wanted to rejoin the circle. After a short while, the glass began to slowly orbit the letters. You could have cut the tension with a knife as we watched it travel past the alphabet, searching for the characters it required to convey its unearthly message. A lot of the communication was such utter gibberish that the boys began acting silly, asking ridiculous questions. Which girls might grant them sexual favors? Who in the room was still a virgin? Displaying the kind of rashness adolescent boys so often do. But someone or something was in the room with us that day. The beaker picked up speed and quickly spelled out silly boy accident. and although the boys brushed off the comment, it was evident their courage was waning. Subsequently, we received further garbled messages, but the only other which had any significance was the final communication of the day. For just as we were thinking of packing up and returning to our own homes, the glass was off again. We all stared in trepidation as the phrase Nana, burn, pan was revealed. Not unduly upset by this latest proclamation, we all parted ways, leaving Debbie to tidy up before her parents returned from work, but not before arranging to meet up at the local recreation ground later that evening. Once safely back at home, all thoughts of the Ouija session were gone from my mind. I ate with my family before changing out of my school uniform and heading to the park. Upon arrival, I noticed Susan, one of the girls who'd been present that afternoon, appeared to be genuinely distressed. Apparently, earlier in the day, her grandma had scalded her arm quite badly on a kettle and was currently in the local accident and emergency department, awaiting treatment. Understandably, we all became a little hysterical upon hearing this news. We were terrified to think one of the Ouija predictions had come to fruition. By 8 o'clock, almost all the kids who had been at Debbie's that day had regrouped. We were just awaiting the arrival of Kevin and Jason. Just when we thought they weren't coming, a figure on a bicycle became apparent in the distance. Pedaling so fast, it seemed the devil himself was chasing him. As he skidded to a halt, we realized it was Jason. He was as white as a sheet, and his face appeared snot-streaked and tear-stained. As we had all secretly feared, further misfortune had transpired. Kevin had also become a casualty of our ill-considered dalliance with spirit. His words, punctuated by gasps and sobs, Jason explained what had happened. As they traveled to the park together, Kevin, who was on his skateboard, began riding recklessly. There were some girls on the opposite side of the street, and he was showing off, trying to impress them. Suddenly, he lost his footing, and his board slipped from beneath him. Then, as though propelled by unseen hands, Kevin was thrown into the path of an oncoming car. Although he sustained a fractured femur and a broken wrist, he made a full recovery. The rest of us vowed never to use the Ouija board again. More than 2 decades have passed since the night I played with the infamous Ouija board. Thinking back, I'm not really sure what was going through my head and what prompted me to attempt such precarious communication. Perhaps the notion could have been given credit due to the thought of innocent play, but after witnessing several things, there was nothing innocent proven about it. It was at night, and I was with 2 others. We were just 3 teenagers looking for something to do, and there were no adults around. So we lit some candles in the room we were in, and also in the room next to us. The atmosphere was all aglow with amber lighting as we readied the spirit board. Once the planchette was placed, we silenced our speech and cleared our minds. With our fingers on the communicative tool, we asked our first question: "Is there anyone here?" Moments passed and nothing happened. We were patient and asked again. Suddenly, the planchette moved. Even though the movement was slight, we still noticed it. Of course, we asked each other who was doing it, but we all vowed that it wasn't us. The room was beginning to feel a bit tense. Still, we decided to continue. We asked several more questions, like, "Who are you?" and "When did you die?" The typical questions of curiosity. What we got in response seemed innocent enough. We were told that the spirit was a female who had died many years prior in a train wreck. That's when I started to feel uneasy, because we were at home, way out in the country, and there weren't any train tracks around for many miles. Then, we asked if the spirit was there to cause us any harm, and we were told no. After that, we proceeded to ask if the spirit ever thought about coming back as a living person in the form of reincarnation. It replied that it had already done that, meaning that it had already been reborn. Our hearts raced, and the looks on our faces were of shock and confusion. But we continued by asking, "Who have you been reincarnated into?" It answered with the name of an individual with whom I hold very, very dear. Someone that I knew in fact had not been inhabited by the spirit. We questioned the spirit on how it could have been reincarnated as someone we knew among the living, if they were communicating with us by use of the Ouija board. A long, awkward pause lingered. There was no response through the planchette, but a candle that was sitting very securely in the center of a table in the next room all of a sudden fell over, making a loud noise. There was no explanation to how the candle could have fallen, because we were all three hovering over the spirit board, and there was no one else in the house. As frightened as we were, we asked the spirit one last question. "Did you cause the candle to fall over?" Its reply was, "Yes." Immediately, we stopped playing with the Ouija board and quickly put it away. The remainder of the night we stayed wide awake, too scared to sleep. To this day, I don't know whatever happened to that Ouija board, and I don't really care, but I do know one thing for certain, and that is, I'll never mess with a spirit board, ever again.